Today, I want to talk about Gary Trent Jr., right? League sources, that's what we're hearing, are saying that they don't expect Gary to be back. And this could be a pretty big disaster for the Toronto Raptors, who are already thin on talent and bench depth. And we're going to take a look at exactly what Gary provides and why I don't think that Dillon Brooks is a suitable option. My God. And really, the gap between these two players is not particularly close, but it hasn't stopped a lot of people from peddling this idea that Dillon Brooks should be a Toronto Raptor. In fact, what team will Dillon Brooks be on next year? Was it Odd Shark? I don't want to give free promo to Odd Shark having Dillon Brooks up there. So we're going to talk about Gary. We're going to talk about what he provides. We're going to talk about just the comparables and why the Raptors, in my opinion, should keep him. Spoiler alert. And why Dillon Brooks is not the answer. And we're also going to look at the Athletics top 20. Well, they did a draft of the top players under 23 and under. Their 23 and under draft. And there are some pretty egregious names ahead of Scottie Barnes. And it kind of comes on the heels of the NBA doing a bit of a profile on Scottie Barnes. And I made a community post about it. It's Past the Rock. And effectively, they're covering all their stars. You got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you got Jason Tatum, right? And apparently, we are supposed to believe, that Scottie Barnes would be 17th in a top. I mean, this is a guy that you didn't trade for Kevin Durant last summer. Has the stock fallen that much because of a sophomore slump? Are we expected to believe that league executives are this stupid, or is this just an athletic thing? So we're going to talk about that. First of all, how you guys doing? The lines are open, and this is going to be a call-in show. So if you want to talk, I'm good to talk. As you can tell, I have slept, and I am feeling so much better. I mean, honestly, the last few lives that we did, I was running on fumes. And a couple of days ago, I, started getting very, very into Pendants stuff and doing all the Pendants prep for the Pendants Film Festival coming up next weekend. And so now the files have been delivered to the theater, and I mean, hopefully you can just tell from looking at my face, I just look a lot less underslept. So, all right, this is a really interesting question, and it really brings me up to my first slide. Okay. So, Gary Trent Jr. is quite an interesting commodity, right? If you're to believe the trade value index on him and the fact that the Raptors apparently tried to move him at the deadline, couldn't really find any suitors, decided to hold on to him, you might believe that, hey, he's a volume scorer, he takes a lot of bad shots, doesn't play very good defense. I've obviously been on my soapbox about this, that his defense has been has been really overrated, that he's probably the worst defender among the starting group for the Raptors. However, there's a lot of stuff that Gary does well, and he's improving steadily, and he's very young. This seems to be the type of player that losing him for nothing right now is going to come back and haunt you. Now, I tried to load up a clip of his dad on the William Lou show, and unfortunately, it's just not loading up. So I'll summarize what he said. Around the 39-minute mark of the April 28th episode of William Lou's podcast, Gary Trent Sr. was on, and he talked about effective leadership and what a good leader should do for a young teammate who's struggling. And a lot of it really came down to helping them out, learning the right way to lead, knowing what to say, how to say it, and, knowing that you're not going to score 50 points every single night, knowing how to get your guys motivated and ready for a game. I thought it spoke really to the selfishness element, and believe me, I'm kind of enjoying that selfishness has become such a talking point this offseason because it does need to be addressed. Now, viewing Gary as a culprit of the selfishness, I think is disingenuous. Just because he takes a lot of shots, a lot of people have pegged the selfish label on him. Trust me, you know me. If a player is selfish, I'll be the first person to call it out. I see a player who genuinely made efforts this year to try and make the right passes. There were passes he made in transition that I think 2 years ago, he didn't try, didn't see, couldn't even make. He's been steadily going up. In terms of where I came in on the season, versus where I went out on the season on various players, no player quite flipped my opinion the way Gary Trent did this year. Partially, my entire beef with him was he wasn't really a three level scorer. So a lot of the defense stuff really stuck out. Some of the shot selection stuff, low percentages, etc., really do compound themselves when you're not a three level scorer. You can't really score in the paint. And it really gets game planned in the playoffs. And I know that Gary had that illness prior, in last year's playoff series against Philly. So we didn't really get to see Gary Trent Jr. in the playoffs. But I have a streaking suspicion that he's the type of player that would actually play really well in the playoffs because he is a tough shot maker and he doesn't seem to have really much of a conscience about himself. But, he struggles in the play-in against the Chicago Bulls, becomes almost unplayable, right? Or so we would believe because Nick Nurse barely played him. And, this is a guy who is starting for you, sometimes playing 35, 40 minutes, and suddenly he can't get minutes off the bench when your starters are dog shit tired. So we have to believe that he was on the outs. Nick Nurse's quote, if he does this, he fits us. If he doesn't, he doesn't, whatever. He doesn't fit us, comes to mind. The benching comes to mind. Him being the de facto guy to go to the bench when Jakob Poeltl was added to the starting lineup comes to mind. Even though maybe in theory, adding a guy like Jakob Poeltl, maybe you don't want to put one of your best shooters out of that lineup, but who are you going to bench? You're not benching Siakam. You're not benching Scottie Barnes. That's sort of the conundrum with this roster, right? Because if Scottie Barnes wasn't the fourth overall pick, most likely, and if Pascal Siakam wasn't your max guy, one of these guys was less optimal for that starting unit than Gary. And that's probably true, right? If we're being honest. But that's not the way we played it, right? And, if Jakob Poeltl wasn't your shiny new addition, he probably was more suitable to come off the bench too. But you needed a center, you needed defense to shore up some of your perimeter defense, and that lineup performed well. And Gary Trent's the odd man out, and cap sheets exist, and the luxury tax is real, and the Raptors are not going to the luxury tax. So what do? Are you willing to let Gary Trent Jr. walk for nothing because you're not going to get signed and trade? First, backtrack for a second. The Raptors put themselves in this position by giving him a 2+1. It was very critical of the deal when it happened. They gave him the 2+1, gave him all the control. Now he's coming off arguably one of his two best seasons ever. You could argue last season was a little bit better, but one of his best seasons ever. And he's going to basically command more than the mid-level. And anything he commands is probably going to put you over the luxury tax. So barring a sign and trade or letting Fred or Jakob walk, he is the odd man out. So league executives have said that they believe that he is the odd guy out. So here, let me make a compelling case for why he probably shouldn't be. Number one, he's younger than three of the core pieces that you value above him. In fact, he's younger than OG as well. So he's actually your second youngest core piece. Scotty being your youngest core piece. Fred's older, Siakam's older, Jakob's older, right? If you count those, right, the OG's older, yeah, so they're all older. Letting go of your second youngest core piece when you don't expect to compete for titles over the next 2 years and you have a flawed core seems to me a little bit short-sighted. I'm not saying all 24-year-olds have exponential growth value or that they have like some sort of, untapped potential, but the odds of that growth coming for a 24-year-old at some point down the line is so much higher than that growth coming for a 28 or 29-year-old. Can we be real about that? We've seen it over and over again. There's a lot of guys who kind of just hung around teams from 21 to 23 and then boom, they get unlocked at 25, 26. I think he has great unlock potential. And I think if the Raptors let him go, he's going to find that unlock potential somewhere else. So first, hang on one second. Let me load this up. First elephant in the room, Dillon Brooks versus Gary Trent Jr. This is not close. Can we be real? This is not close, right? Dillon Brooks takes a lot of shots. Per 36 minutes, he takes more shots than Gary. Does he score more points than Gary? No, because he's significantly less efficient. He's less efficient from three. He's less efficient from the field. He's a less efficient free throw shooter. Is he a better defender? Yes, but so much of this is negated by the fact that he's 3 years older and a complete head case. right? The per 100 possessions, really do speak to that. And honestly, his defense is kind of overrated too. I know certain analytics are going to look at him positively. I know Crafted themselves have him in an 88th percentile defender. But I mean, in all honesty, he's not that great a defender, guys. He's very active, he's very disruptive, he's very loud. His entire defense is basically like his personality. It's loud and it's extra. Okay? Yes, it's easier to be a good defender when you have Jaren Jackson Jr., Defensive Player of the Year, Steven Adams behind you, right? But barring those types of, really great defenders behind you, he might get exposed too. Also, some of the quotes that have been coming out, I mean, this is on the heels. Like, can we take a minute to just talk about Dillon Brooks, because we all know that that's what he wants us to do anyway. So we're just gonna give it 1 minute of time. Honestly, why are we talking about Dillon Brooks? Like, has he ever posted a positive box plus minus? Is he a starter in the NBA? I mean, I remember John Morant's quote that, "Oh, we're rocking with Dillon," when asked about his questionable shot selection. But John Morant maybe shouldn't be trusted right now. Okay, his decision making kind of sucks. I don't want to take a low shot because Ja's like literally one of my favorite players, but like, yo, it does not help you win when a guy takes these types of shots. It also does not help you win when a guy is talking shit to LeBron James, and then I mean, you take an L, right? Like, the biggest L of the playoffs so far is Dillon Brooks. So you might think, wow, Rob, he must be underrated right now. Let's get a value deal on Dillon Brooks and bring him home. No, man. Like, honestly, you take the real issues on this team are what? A lot of people that overestimate their value, a lot of people that hang on to the ball a little bit too much, a lot of people that take questionable shots. Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's add the poster child for that. Y'all remember the all brick team? I wish I still had that graphic. Dillon Brooks was on it. Fred VanVleet was on it as well. Never missed a chance to, congratulate him for making the all brick team. But Dillon Brooks is like the captain of the all brick team. Never met a shot he didn't like. What was the quote? Said, "I would be Michael Jordan in a lesser league." Yo, my God. This is like Mike James vibes with none of the Mike James efficiency, none of the Mike James scoring package, none of the Mike James dog. Like, this is fake toughness. I don't like this. You can talk a big game. You can, dress like Stone Cold Steve Austin and all that stuff, but you're not fooling me, man. Real toughness, it doesn't wilt this way. Okay. I would respect him a little bit more if he stood on it. You know what I mean? Like, a little bit like Draymond. I don't like Draymond, but I could respect it. Like, he's a bit of a prick, but he's always a prick. He's always been a prick. He's always going to be a prick. And he's very unapologetically a prick. Like, he crushed Domantas Sabonis, stomped on him, and then complained that Domantas Sabonis, because he didn't shake his hand, was a poor sportsman. That is the type of delusion that you can almost respect and say, that's just how he thinks. Dillon Brooks, on the other hand, does everything wrong, says everything wrong, plays everything wrong, and then complains about how the media is making him a bad guy. Yo, keep this guy away from my team, please. Please keep him away from my team. Honestly, there's some people commenting that he should be in China. Keep him away from China, man. I like China. Let's put him somewhere else, okay? Like, go start your own rec league in Antarctica. I created an Instagram post saying Dillon Brooks coming to a YMCA near you. Probably that's where this is going. 27 years old, not like athletically interesting athlete, very interesting. Positional versatility is awesome. And I can understand why you might think like a guy like this in a very reduced role off the bench, but that's not what he's coming for. He's not coming as a guy like so much of what Dillon Brooks could be if he bought into, I don't know, a Lou Dort type of, role. Well, Lou Dort, I mean, that's criminally, sleeping on Lou Dort. Lou Dort's a hell of a player. But like, if he could buy into a defensive specialist, lockdown defender type of role and then do none of the offensive stuff, but that's clearly not how he sees himself. He thinks, I mean, what was his comment after the Memphis Grizzlies said that they're under no circumstances to bring him back? He's like, "Oh, I've been kind of boxed in Memphis. There's so many things I can do." Oh my God. A person who plays with Desmond Bane and John Morant makes the all brick team because he's never met a shot that he didn't like, not really that talented as an offensive player. Dribbling package is weak. All right. Offensive package is weak. Shot is disgusting. This guy thinks he has more. This level of delusion is not NBA worthy. So, you know what? I'm sure he'll catch on to an NBA team. I'm not saying he's going to be out of the league, but keep him away from my team, please. Now, Gary is a very good player, in my opinion. All right. So, but how good, right? Some of y'all watched the Sacramento Kings, partially because we have a bit of an affiliation with Basketball Zone, and sometimes leaders come on to talk about the Sacramento Kings on this channel. So I expect that there's probably more Sacramento Kings fans here than there are in most of the Raptor spaces just because we've talked about them so much. So I'm sure y'all were seeing Malik Monk, right? Malik Monk was really good for the Sacramento Kings this year. But Malik is, he's an incomplete player, a very incomplete player. He's a very bad defender. I've gone back and forth and debated this, but he's a very bad defender. So take a look at Malik versus Gary. All right. And look, I mean, it's pretty close. I mean, Gary's got him beat in a lot of places, right? He just does. But I mean, in terms of value of a replacement, they're both 1.1 box plus minus. Gary's got him beat. Win shares, Gary. Interestingly enough, Malik just played way more minutes. Wait, hold on. Sorry, this is comparing. I don't know why this is comparing Malik's entire career to Gary's. That's my bad. Did I do it on the last one too? Hang on. Let me just check here. No. Okay. Point being, Gary Trent Jr. is a much better defender than you might think. So take a look at his career just charting up from Portland, right? Now, typically the rule of thumb is for the first couple of years, you expect a player to be negative box plus minus, but as they get a little bit older, you expect them to gradually go above the 0 mark. That's generally a good sign. And Gary's pretty much 23 and 24 year seasons are, positive box plus minus, positive value replacement, decent win shares. I mean, 10 win shares. Bro, Gary has more win shares at 10 in the last season than Dillon Brooks has in his whole career. Right? I mean, that's significant. I would say that's very significant. Hang on. How many jeez, hang on one sec. Malik has more win shares than Malik in the last 2 seasons than Malik has in his whole career. I think at some point you gotta look at that. I mean, look, in the Raptors switching scheme and everything that they do defensively, that's so complicated. A guy like Gary Trent is going to stand out like a sore because he's the only non-good defender, right? But when you start comparing him to bad defenders like Trae Young, a common guy who's mentioned a lot on this channel, Anthony Simons, when you start comparing him to guys like Malik Monk, Kevin Huerter, De'Aaron Fox, oh my God, there's so many bad defenders, so many guard bad defenders, and they're playing. Some of them are playing right now. Most of them are not, but Tyrese Maxey, horrible defender. He's not a good defender at all. He's awful. He is an awful defender. James Harden's okay. He's better. He's gotten a lot better. He used to be terrible. But man, there's so many bad defenders. Like Jordan Poole, horrible defender. And Gary Trent Jr. is better as a defender than all of those guys that I just mentioned. And it's not even close. So he's got you about dead even on defense. He's not good. He's not bad. He's not great. He can float. So you put 4 decent defenders around him, you can build a great defense with Gary Trent Jr. Just give him a role that he can actually function in. He'll be the guy that you hide on your weakest assignment. You're not throwing him on Jason Tatum. I get that. But he's strong. He's kind of got like that base. So you could hide him on a 4 sometimes. You could hide him on a non-scoring guard. Like, I mean, almost every team has someone that he can match up with and not kill you too often, maybe not put in the best positions this year. But the offensive uptick that really surprised me this season with Gary was really his paint finishing. It just got so much better. His clutch shooting. And this might surprise you, but he was the Raptors' most efficient clutch squared performer. Not on volume, obviously, we have a pecking order to address and to maintain in this locker room. Can't have Gary Trent Jr. playing hero, but he was by far the most effective. Well, not by far. He, OG, and Scotty were all very effective in the clutch. Fred was okay. Pascal was disastrous. Guess who took all the shots, right? Like who got the most attempts, right? So it was just an inverted thing. But like isolation scoring is a thing. I mean, look at the draft. Like how many guys are getting prioritized in the high lottery because of their ability to break down a defender and get their shot off. I mean, half of this chat is probably screaming for Keontae George. Yo, that's Gary Trent Jr. in a nutshell. You know? So you don't want to lose this guy for nothing. But the Raptors set themselves up by giving him that player option after 2 years. And I swear I was so critical of it. And now you're in this situation where you might lose him. Now his dad was, as I said, on William Lou, and it's just the comments being made plus the everything coming out just makes me think, he did not have a good time this season. He stayed professional, but there are a couple times in the past where I felt like a guy is 1 foot out the door. Ray Allen with the Boston Celtics, and that last year who's with Boston. You were watching him in the finals. Oh, sorry, in the playoffs, they were facing off against Miami Heat, and I just also almost felt like he was given his resume to the Heat, and lo and behold, he ended up on the Heat next year. I think Gary could be just ready for this Toronto chapter to be over. I think firing Nurse probably helped, but I think the Raptors have a bridge to sew with Gary, right? And I would like them to sew it. Believe me, was not here in the beginning of the year, but I believe that this guy, if given an opportunity, could really blossom into a 22 to 23 point per game scorer on better efficiency than he's shown. I think his playmaking can expand a little bit, and I think his defense can just hold water. I don't think that that's the type of player you want to lose, especially if you expect to implement a new offense, which will unlock shooters, movement shooters, some sort of structure and principle and motion. If you can get a coach who knows what they're doing on offense, you can actually unlock Gary to be so much better. I can't believe I'm saying this because, again, in the offseason, I made a video saying the Raptors backcourt is a problem. You need to get rid of both of them. I'm not there right now. I think you need to keep this guy. And I don't know how you replace him because what you have is the mid-level exception and the 13th overall pick. Good luck. Good luck getting a 0.2 box plus minus shot creator, who can hold water on defense, who's 24 years old or younger with either of those assets. Very difficult. I think you could replace him with the 7th pick. I think you could probably replace him with $20 million or $18 million cap space. But barring that, I think you should keep him. So what's the solution? Honestly, beating a dead horse here. Just beating a dead horse. Trade Siakam. That's the solution. Or like if you put a gun to my head and said, okay, Gary or Fred, choose one. You got to keep one and lose one. I think the asset, you keep Gary. Now that's shocking because Fred is definitely a better player. Definitely a better player. And Fred is going to help you win more next year. 100%. I see that. But it's not about next year only. It's about the year after that and the year after that. It's about injury history. It's about age. It's about upside. It's about market value around the league. It's about positional strengths. How many teams need a player like Gary off the bench? How many players need a starting point guard like Fred VanVleet that would actually want him? I think the asset is favorable for Gary. Also, Gary is not going to cost as much as Fred, so it actually gives you a little bit more room. It's not equivalent. It's not like saying, okay, one for 25, the other for 25. It's not the same, right? Also, personal bias aside, I think that Fred was a much bigger problem of the chemistry issues this year than Gary was. Just my take. Personal opinion. Okay, I do want to talk about this Scotty Athletic article. As I mentioned, phone lines are open. If you want to call, link is in the description below, the StreamYard link. You just click it and call. We haven't done a call-in show for a while, so I don't even know how to talk to people anymore, but hopefully we can discuss it. And okay, let me just take a look at some of these comments here. Team Kobe Buffkin. I am really warming up to that dude, man. I really like him. Gosh, what was a really good Kobe Buffkin comparison that someone mentioned the other day? Tyrese Maxey? Interesting. I don't think he's quite the shooter, but um, wow, washed. I don't know. I wouldn't count him out so quick. But um, if you're looking for like really something great, Malik or Gary, yo, that's a really good question. Honestly, Gary. And I know Malik's a better playmaker and, he had a better year or whatever, but winning does that in terms of like skewing perspectives. But, a year ago, before the ascendance of the Sacramento Kings, and again, you got to look at it from this perspective. Malik's a part of that offense too. Okay. So, you're getting a guy who like is there, right? Like he's a part of that offense. He's a beneficiary of that offense, in my opinion. Yeah, I wouldn't blame him if he leaves. 25 a year. If he gets more than the mid-level, I think someone should be fired. Someone should definitely be fired. 25 million for what? Wow. He's really riding those all brick team. Wow, that's crazy. I don't think that that's true. Thank you so much, Leanne. Um, Gary Trent Jr.'s D is targeted by opponents in the playoffs. Pass on him. When have you really seen him in the playoffs, man? I didn't say minimum, did I? If I did, I apologize. No, I meant mid level. Like if he gets more than the mid level. Did I say minimum? I don't think I said minimum. Yeah, I mean, look, there's only so much upside that you can squeeze out of a guy who doesn't have like the physical profile of a great defender, right? Like he's a little bit laterally compromised, doesn't move his feet nearly as well. It's just about effort with him, right? So in the Raptors defensive system, he was often also a beneficiary of some very good defenders doing stuff, pressuring, and he was able to gap passing lanes and offer help and strip and poke I mean, again, all of this does not make a great defender. Allen Iverson was great at gapping passing lanes. He was a terrible defender. But, you know, um, okay, good. All right. Phew. Um, I mean, come on. Why does the way a guy dress bother anybody? Who cares? And I don't think he dresses like a pimp. I think he dresses like a 24-year-old, you know. I mean, if you see his dad, I mean, whatever. Um, I mean, but was he healthy? He wasn't really healthy, right? We're giving Fred a pass, but we're not giving him a pass. That does not make sense to me. It doesn't necessarily make sense to me at all. So, you know, um, all right. I want to talk about. I want to talk about the athletic. I want to talk about this athletic art. Uh, okay. First, I want to take a minute to show you what I've been working on. I have some videos on the way. I know. I'm sorry. I'm late. I'm late on the Scotty video. I'm late on the Jeff Doughton video. And I had this video that I wanted to do where I was cross comparing chess to basketball and the principles of chess and the principles of basketball. And it's so fascinating. And I think it's like deep and I think people are gonna like it. But man, these videos take time and I'm swamped right now. I have an editing assignment that I am officially a month behind on, which sucks because I feel really bad. And I promised this dude that I would do it for him. So I feel kind of obligated to finish that first and then do that next. But man, you know, I'm a little bit behind and I haven't been managing my time super well. And doing a lot of these lives is great. It's great. It facilitates a sense of community and stuff. And I'm really for that. But yeah, um, No, for sure, for sure, for sure. I definitely see him taking a jump. Have you guys checked out the Scotty Pass the Rock little documentary on NBA.com? Definitely check it out and give it a like. I mean, it's dope. Really interesting to see him, chatting it up with Precious Achua and Christian Coloco in that documentary, giving them some shine as well. Um, is there, apart from coffee, is there anything else you like? Yeah, I like cinema, and you've set me up perfectly for, the next minute of what I want to tell you guys about. So I've been working very, very hard on the Pendants Film Festival, and we finally dropped our trailer today. It's pretty dope. And look, mass production sucks. I hate you'll notice on this channel I have a lot of takes against the media. I don't like how the media, paints a narrative and then everyone kind of talks that same narrative. They just repeat it. So like, um, God, the Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic thing that I went on a rant about, people just started talking about, oh, Nikola Jokic's defense. Nikola Jokic. Are you seeing the Denver Nuggets defense against the Suns right now? Right? Thinking Fast and Slow is a great book on this, and it basically says that everything we process is in either slow thought or fast thought. And most of us avoid slow thought because it's tedious, so we speed up the process. We go and we say, "What is he saying? He sounds cool. Let me just say what he's saying. Let me not think about this too much. Let me not address my biases and whatever." And I think that slow thinking is what creates growth and facilitates growth in human beings. I also think independent thoughts are what create growth. So much of as a filmmaker, right, and as someone who's participated in the media a little bit, I have a certain sense of cleaning up ideas, right? Like, you can't say what you want all the time. You can't make the film you want, right? If you're really big, like if you're a big studio, there's certain things you can't say in a film because it might piss off this demographic, that demographic. You can't use that word, can't say that word, can't, you can't present that character that way. You can't have, if you want to sell your film in China, you better not show the Chinese, the villain being a Chinese guy, it better be a Russian guy, right? So some things like this, it filters out truth from our content consumption. So if I become a coward tomorrow and I'm no longer able to tell you what I think without fear of, oh my God, what if I get canceled? What if my sponsors cancel me? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if people flame me for thinking this way? Well, then I can never really present a thought that isn't already accepted, right? I can't go on my Pascal Siakam is not top five, top 10, top 15 early. I have to wait for him to fail. Then I can present it so that I will not be hated. And I think that that's sort of a stupid way to go about life. I think you should be able to speak your mind. I think independent thoughts need to exist. And that's why we created Pendants, because I had a vision in 2017 that I one day wanted my kids to be able to go into a movie theater and not see curated crap. And sometimes when I'm watching Netflix, some of the stuff is great, man. Some of the stuff is really good, but some of it is not. Some of it is polished and curated, and it's just all the truth and meaning and nuance is just beaten out of it. And it really pisses me off, and it pissed me off so much. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll just go to major film festivals. That's where I'll see it. But presented by L'Oreal, presented by Pfizer, presented by, okay, so they can't have that either. So the thing that used to exist for, a person who has a great idea that maybe not, the most popular or the most commercially appealing or whatever, used to be able to go to film festivals and do that. And so now there's like a sinking of the middle. And then, yeah, so we created Pendants basically to promote and celebrate great stories, because I think the stories can change lives. I have a shirt that says story over everything because I think the story that you tell yourself changes your life. That's genuinely my belief, is that we all have a recurring story that plays in through our head of who we are, what the world is the world dangerous place, world exciting place, is, am I attractive or am I unattractive? Do I have something to offer? This is a story. You're a character in a story. Most people are just characters in their own story. And so I think the cinema can create great impressions on our minds, and the idea of being in a theater and having just, your mind altered and state in 200 people or 150 people around you laughing in unison. So this idea was really important to me when we created Pendants. So I just want to play fave director writer. Stanley Kubrick. It's such a basic film nerd answer, but he's one of them. Ashghar Farhadi, an Iranian director. I love his work as well. Christian Mingui is a Romanian director, and Srdan Golobovic, Serbian director that I really like and who I actually know, and he was on the jury of Pendants. He was nominated for an Oscar in 2007, 2008 for a film called The Trap. Um, okay. Enough spewing poetic. Take a look at 1 minute trailer, and then we will talk about Scottie Barnes.
Do you feel safe out here riding your bike on these streets alone?
This is a fucking BMX bike, so I'm not afraid.
So, whether you have a cinema lover in your life or you are a cinema lover, and if you're dead broke and you can't afford, $12, $14 tickets, write me a comment or send me an email and maybe I can hook you up with something. All right. James Welsh, thank you so much, man. Okay. Now, recency bias is a real thing with sports, and I expected better from The Athletic. Come on, man. Pay for a subscription, expect good basketball takes. So this is not shade on The Athletic. They have a lot of writers that I really like on The Athletic. But this is kind of ridiculous. Like, it's beyond ridiculous. All right. Among the players in their, this is crazy. Chet Holmgren over Scottie Barnes. I just had that spaz out with that Thunder fan just the other day where he was talking about how it's underrating Chet, and he was like, oh, but he hasn't played a single game. And, shout outs to that guy. He wrote a comment. I didn't respond to it, but yo, he hasn't played a single game. How are you putting him over a rookie of the year when they're the same age? They're basically the same age. Keegan Murray? What? Yo, you remember the trade show that we did? We had Leo on. He was willing to give, and I mean, shout outs to Leo. But this is how, and he's a big Kings fan. He was so worried about the Kings' perimeter defense, which was, by the way, a founded worry, which cost them, in my opinion, in the playoffs. He was so worried about the Kings' perimeter defense that he's willing to give up Keegan Murray plus 2 first-round picks plus Harrison Barnes for OG Anunoby. The Raptors did not give up Scottie Barnes plus stuff for Kevin Durant. So, are you seeing the seismic gap here? There is such a disconnect between how The Athletic has presented Scottie here and how, people who actually understand basketball, in my opinion, see Scottie. Scottie should be a top 8 pick, top 7 pick, maybe top 6 pick in this type of draft. You do not, I understand the upside of a Tyrese Maxey, and I like Tyrese Maxey. I like Keegan Murray. I like Chet Holmgren. I like Paolo Banchero. I like a lot of these guys. But every player I just mentioned went over Franz and Scottie. That's crazy to me. Recency bias is a real thing. What have you done for me lately? Right? It also is very prevalent to me. It's very apparent to me that people sometimes double down on what other people are saying. They get too far, too carried away. Guys tend to go from underrated to overrated. And it usually works in that oscillating factor where you become too up and then you go down. Now, personally, I watched Evan Mobley in the playoffs. I watched Evan Mobley all last year. all this year. Very curious about him. I like him a lot as a player. If I could trade Pascal Siakam for Evan Mobley, I would have done it a year ago. Okay, so I like him. But you're not telling me that he really showed up in the playoffs, right? Y'all saw something. You saw something that warrants Tim Duncan meets Kevin Garnett type hype and upside. He finished top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year voting. I get that. He's a very good defender. But you're not telling me that Scottie Barnes isn't a good defender. He's not a, Defensive Player of the Year type defender. But the gap between these players offensively is enormous right now. Right? And if you're going to tell me that Scotty didn't take a step forward offensively, well, I'll tell you you're capping. But Evan Mobley didn't really take a step forward at all offensively either. So what is it? Paolo Banchero, a guy who I don't think had 1 win share on the entire season, but because he put up 20 points per game, we're gonna rate that. But if Scotty had an entire offense featured around him, I'm pretty sure he put up 20 points per game too. So much of this is coming down to, hey, how high can you possibly put the 5th leading scorer or the 6th leading, or whatever Scotty was, fifth leading scorer, the 5th leading scorer on a team that didn't make the playoffs. I think this is a really good indication of where Fred, Gary, and Pascal's market may also be, because those guys were not eligible for this list, so you can't really see it. But you will never understand, unless you really study it, how much losing, the way the Raptors lost this year, like being clowned for how they lost, getting bounced in the play-in by the lower seed, missing 18 straight free throws, like becoming a sort of meme, the DeAr DeRozan thing. You never completely appreciate how much that can solidly tank your value, because you are the 5th leading scorer on a really bad team. And a lot of these other guys are the leading scorers on really bad teams. And so the impression there is, I would rather have the leading scorer on a 34-win team than the 5th leading scorer on a 41-win team. And that's a silly way to look at things, in my opinion. I really do believe that. Now, there was a comment on the last video that I thought just blew my mind. It was so smart. And it was someone commenting about Jokic versus Embiid. And I really am very firm that Jokic is so underrated by common basketball fans. Yes, even after 2 MVPs, I believe he's underrated, because he impacts the game in these million different ways that don't obviously show up on the box score, because the box score is not a good measure. The traditional box score is not a good measure for how we play basketball. It's not a good measure. And synergy and, all the tracking data we now have can give us a clear perspective on who is doing what where, and how is that actually moving the thing that matters at the end of the day, which is the score, right? So Paolo's defense versus Scotty's defense, Evan Mobley's offense, like complete two-way players who are way above average defensively, carry a way bigger load off defensively, and are average to above average offensively, even though they have a glaring hole and are playing in a really bad offense. I think that player projects better forward. So that's just me. But specifically, the point that I was making about Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic, and then that comment that came up, he said, I can't remember who said it. He said, analytics are for those whose eyes cannot be trusted. And people say eye test versus analytics, stats versus analytics. And he said, analytics are for those whose eyes cannot be trusted. And I thought that was brilliant. Because really, when you talk to a pro scout in 1999, 2002, prior to the rise of analytics, they were telling you a lot of the same things about why they like a certain player versus another player, even though there weren't really analytics to prop it up. Like, we all knew that Shane Battier and Bruce Bowen were better than what their box score showed, right? We all knew that Andrei Kirilenko was a way better player than his all-star selections would show. We knew that. We knew that Scottie Pippen, Sean Marion, we knew guys like this were doing things on the basketball court that weren't showing up in the box score. And it's not just hustle stats. It's not just, diving for loose balls. It's the hockey assists. It's the it's the picks. It's the picks they set, or it's the timely shots they make, or it's the coverages, or how they cover for cover for a weaker defender on their team, or how they always manage to like 10 assists from Steve Nash are not the same as 10 assists from Jason Kidd, or not the same as 10 assists from Russell Westbrook. We all know this intuitively. If you understand basketball, you know this, right? You could say like, yeah, he averages 4 assists, but he's a really great passer. That's going to show up in the analytics. The analytics are not some, goofy thing that's trying to, give nerds a place in basketball. Actually, it is exactly what that commenter suggested it is. It is a way for people who cannot see the nuances of the game to have numbers to point to. I think that's about it, right? You don't need analytics to tell you that Jakob Poeltl's a really good player. You watch him. If you're a pro scout, you watch him. You see how he sets picks. You see how he's always in the right place at the right time. You see how he contests at the rim. And you're like, man, I don't know what a contest is worth. He didn't block that shot, but that's got to count for something, right? Like when a guy gets his hands on a ball and it's in the passing lane and there's 3 seconds left on the clock and it's going straight to a corner shooter for an open 3 and he tips it out of bounds. That's nothing on the box score. That's not a steal. That's not an assist. That's not a rebound. It's not a point. It's nothing. But someone who was watching, like a coach or a player, they're going to be like, he just saved them 3 points right there. Or he saved them 1.6 points. That's got to count for something. And so analytics are still in their infancy stages, as I've mentioned, but they are doing their best at this point to capture all those little things that don't show up in the traditional box score. And in my opinion, Scottie Barnes is an analytics darling waiting to happen. Once he can honestly, the analytics hate guys who don't shoot threes. We know this, right? It's the most efficient shot in basketball. Analytics are all geared towards guys who shoot threes. And the fact that Scotty is a beast analytically and a really good player analytically, among rookies of the year, he was like middle of the pack, rookie of the year all time in terms of a lot of the analytics scores. Like he was above guys that you would never expect him to be above, right? Like really great players. Not to mention, obviously, like people like Paolo Banchero, who are at the very, very bottom, and Michael Carter-Williams and all those, bad rookies of the year who didn't move the needle too much for their team analytically. So once he figures out the 3 on a higher volume, suddenly those shot quality metrics are going up. Then he starts figuring out the creation. That's going to come on the coach. Coach gives him more creation load. Passer rating goes up. Now the shooting goes up, roll goes up, gets a little bit stronger, a little bit wiser. Suddenly he's making more passes because he's getting doubled more. He's being featured more. Suddenly the assist rate goes up. This is a guy who can legitimately one day frame this video, freeze it or whatever, bookmark this and come back to it in 3 years. This is a guy who can give you a 10 box plus minus season, 8 to 10. That's MVP level. I don't know if he'll ever win MVP. I don't know that. I suspect he'll be in the running a few years of his career. But this is a guy with that level of upside. I'm not saying Paolo Banchero. No, I'm going to say it. He doesn't have that level of upside. I don't think so. Unless he becomes like he'll become one of those like Russell Westbrook type. If he wins MVP at some point, he'll become a Russell Westbrook MVP, which is to say that he will seriously like just average a triple double one year and people will be like, wow, ooh, ah. But in terms of like the analytics score, right? Like where we're looking at, how many win shares, what's his value replacement? Like when we start Raptor, whatever, right? You start looking at that, I think at some point, Scotty is going to be like top 5 in almost every analytic. Once he figures out his load going up on this team, that'll just be pecking order basically. And the shooting, 2 things, because he does everything else really well already. Rebounds reasonably well. He takes care of the ball. He's not overly foul prone. He does a lot of good things. So yeah, once the 3-point shot comes, my God. And if he can figure out his touch around the basket, that'll help too. Because I think that was something that was sorely, hit or miss sometimes this season. So health, improving his shot, I think he'll take a big leap. All right, 31 comments, and we still have no callers. People don't. Um, Michael Motley saying, "Why was Jokic drafted so low?" Um, I guess it's because when you look at him, what he could become was not obvious. He was really overweight. He was kind of chubby. He had a lot of like, I mean, I've mentioned this before that I know people who knew him when he was much younger, right? My sister knew him. And so, like, he was just this very offbeat person. He would try these like incredibly wild things in the game that you'd never seen anyone do. Like he would be flicking passes over the back. And if you didn't watch him play and if you weren't really hip to what he was trying to do, and then it would sort of become like you just look at the box score and you see Nikola Jokic 3-4 turnovers and you're just like, oh well, this big guy is also like no muscle definition. I think at some point like it was like a story that he was drinking like 2 liters of pop every single day. Yo, been there. I mean, not 2 liters, definitely not 2 liters, but I definitely went through my, drink pop every day, phase, and that shit'll turn you pre-diabetic real quick. So, yeah, I think it's just sort of when you look at him, he just doesn't look very athletic. He doesn't look like very impressive, but the wingspan, the coordination, the footwork, all of that stuff that really should be tested better, but is often not. And it's really hard to tell what an athlete is when they're not in peak condition, when they're not in great shape. So I think a lot of people passed on him, but I saw him as a rookie and he was great. Like he stood out like freaking amazing. Like he was on the same team as Yusuf Nurkic, and I'd watched Nurkic over in Europe, and I'm not a fan. Was not a fan of Nicole. Sorry, was not a fan of Yusuf Nurkic. And I'm just watching these two players, and I believe at the time he was backing up Nurkic, and I was just like, this is not even close. Like he's so much better than him. So, yeah, that's just the person. Like I asked the question I think on Instagram the other day: Are there 12 centers in the league that are better than Kevon Looney? And I think that's a great example of what I'm talking about when I say analytics. Because someone said Yusuf Nurkic, and I was just like, bro, but he's not. Like he's more talented, yes, but he's not better. He's not better. He's not better. Kevon Looney impacts winning in so many ways. I mean, not everybody has to do the same fucking thing. They don't. Everyone doesn't have to be an isolation scorer. Everyone doesn't have to be a passer. Everyone doesn't have to be a shooter. Like, and this really does go so well into the chess video that I wanted to make, because I don't know how many of you play chess. I play chess a lot. Chess is like, honestly, if someone gave me like $50 million tomorrow, I'd probably retire and play chess all day. Maybe like I'd just watch basketball and play chess. That would be like my whole life, and make films, like make badass films. But I love chess, and the most interesting thing about chess and basketball and the parallels that I wanted to get into the video was that you have all these different pieces and they're supposed to work together. And when you have too many of the same pieces, it can actually get into each other's way, right? But all these different pieces, they have a role on a chessboard, just like all the pieces on a basketball court have a role. And so, yeah, you might say that the guy who sets screens and grabs offensive rebounds and, does all the hustle stuff and protects the rim isn't as skilled or important as Jason Tatum. And so you would say, well, yeah, a rook is not as important as a queen, but they can work together, and they work together really well. It's certainly better than having 6 white square bishops. That I'll tell you, right? If you ever have 6 white square bishops because you are a complete idiot who promotes all your pawns to white square bishops, please understand that they at some point just become pawns. And that's kind of the point, right? If you have too much of the same thing, it becomes redundant. If all you have is rooks, right, at some point you're going to wish you had a few bishops. So this conversation veered off into chess talk, of course. But yeah. Seriously, he passed on Jokic twice that draft. That's the saddest part. So sad. Oh, I forgot. Giveaway. There's a giveaway. So, someone today, a Pensar basketball person, sent us an email, and they have asked to remain anonymous. They didn't want to be shouted out on the live, but shout outs, you know who you are. Purchased one pass, no, two passes for the Pendants Film Festival, and have, oh, okay, sorry, I zipped in and out there. So they purchased two passes for the Pendants Film Festival, and has said, "Hey, do you want to do a giveaway on your live for people who want to check this out?" So, if you would like to claim the two passes, just message me. I'm gonna put my email right here. Um, films at gmail.com. Um, Message me this with your favorite movie, right? And whether you're free May 12th, 13th, 14th, you don't want these passes to go to waste. But we're able to donate two passes as a gift to the community. So, aw, yeah, yeah. No, I think a lot of people live kind of in Toronto. I think a lot of people who support the Raptors do live kind of close. So, yeah, if y'all want to yeah, it's first come first serve. There's no wrong answers, but yeah, like if you tell me Fast and Furious 9, I'm gonna probably judge you. But yeah, so let me know your favorite movie, and if you want to attend, you can attend. Yeah, it's a really cool event. Meet some of the best independent filmmakers in the world. You got people coming in from all over the world. Red carpet, photographs, meet some people, watch some cool films. Yeah. Um, Alrighty, guys. That is it for me. If you haven't hit subscribe. I'm gonna try to do a live. You know what I wanted to do? I want it. Okay, another question for this community. Does anyone want to do a 100 top 125 player draft with me? This will require some working knowledge around the league. I've asked Vince. I don't know if he has time. I asked Coach Mo. He said he needs time to prepare. I don't know who's going to do this, but the more the merrier. If we can have 4 or 5 people do this, this will be great. So basically it would work like this. 125 players on the board. Bring your, do some research, rank out your 125 players, and as they get picked up, just be at home and cross them off, and let's see who we draft. It's kind of like what the TNT group did with the all-time draft. They drafted the top 75 players of all time, and Charles Barkley picked Allen Iverson. Um, so yeah, this requires you being, on the screen though. So you would draft the best team. You think so? You understand I'm participating in this draft too, right? How did I get started in the film industry? Interestingly enough, y'all see the scar on my head? Where is it? Here? Do you see it? I think you can see it sometimes. So I had a vase fall on my head. So I worked at a hedge fund when I was 22, 23. And I always had this, I want to call it a gift for writing. I've always loved writing. I wrote, articles for basketball, but beyond that, I also did creative writing. I've written speeches for politicians. Had, one day I'll make enough money and then I'll be able to, retire and then I'll be able to do this. And my parents died pretty young, so I always assumed that I got to do this sooner because I might not live forever. And then I was 25. I want to say I was 25. It was 25. And I was looking after my friend's dog, Lennon. And Lennon was poking at my bedside at some wires. And it's just like wires, wires, wires. And she kept poking, poking, poking. And then overnight, the wire got wrapped around my foot. The wire was connected to a speaker. The speaker was above my bed, but it's also looped around a bamboo, like a bamboo vase. And so basically, long story short, when I woke up, I pulled my leg and I didn't feel the resistance. And I basically smashed a vase on my head with the wire because it was looped around. And I will never forget that day. I went and I laid down on the front lawn of my building thinking I was gonna die. I was bleeding so much. Like it looked like a murder scene at my house. Sorry, trigger warning, but it was so bad. Like I don't know if you ever like foreheads are big bleeders and yo, like it was crazy. So I'm in the ambulance. It took 45 minutes for the ambulance to come first of all. I'm in the ambulance. I'm thinking I'm gonna die. I'm for sure gonna die. I have bled out so much. Like I got 39 stitches across my head. Like I was so, you know, and I was in the ambulance and I'm just like, I don't know. I was there and I was just said to myself, I'm not waiting anymore. So a couple of days later, I went and bought a camera and I made I made a film. Um yeah. Y'all here.
Hello? Anyone there? I'm trapped!
911, what's the address of the emergency?
There's someone here, someone in my apartment.
I need you to stay on the phone with me, okay? Just wait until we get there.
You're not listening! You're listening to me.
And this is my fifth film. See if it
Where's
got
the
any
car?
better.
It's been impounded. Can you please come and get me? I really screwed up.
Take your backpack. One down and we'll find out where he hit.
263.
Just promise me you won't play any Miles Davis.
What's wrong with Miles Davis? Serious?
Dead serious. You play blue and green and I'm walking out.
What about Sanctuary?
I've never heard it.
You want to hear it?
Is it by Miles Davis?
Yeah.
Then no.
All right, guys, make sure to subscribe on your way out, like this video, and tell a film lover in your life about Pendants. Thank you to those of you who are already supporting. I've gotten so many emails from this community saying, hey, I'm going to tell my sister about this. Someone bought a pass with his sister, Black Nubian. You know who you are, Leanne, so many people. And to the person who generously donated 2 passes today, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, man. All right. Cheers, guys. Have a good one. Peace.